of you are familiar with TOMS Shoes? Probably several of you. It's an incredibly successful company that has built its success on its business model, in which for every pair of shoes that you buy, they donate a pair of shoes to a child in need. It sounds perfectly harmless, right? Well, in actuality, the system is flawed. Let me explain. John Favini, who's an expert on the development of the African continent, once wrote a highly revered blog in which he says that this TOMS model is a classic mistake of giving fish instead of training fishermen. You see, TOMS Shoes is manufactured in 3 countries. So out of the 50 countries that it donates to, 47 of those countries' economies are being local economy is just being incredibly threatened. TOMS has a very sincere heart in wanting to help, but their actions are instead harmful. They want to treat the symptom of poverty, of giving things, instead of the root, and sadly, very reflective of American culture. We want to give objects and impress our Western culture on worldwide poverty instead of actually working to make long-term change through the root of it. And since Americans are one of the wealthiest countries in the world, then we should be informed about this worldwide international problem and actually work to make change. Poverty can be treated through reform of education, healthcare, and economy. By the end of my speech, you should be informed of these misconceptions and actually know what to do to make long-term change. First, let's highlight the brevity and seriousness of poverty. Poverty is a huge global crisis that is getting a lot of attention, but very, very little results. Here are some facts from globalissues.org. 80% of humanity lives on less than $10 a day. 121 million children worldwide are without education. 2.2 million children die every year because of lack of immunization. 0.13% of the world's population controls 25% of the world's assets. And my personal favorite, for every $1 given in aid, $25 is given towards debt repayment for the poor who are in debt. As you can see, there is a common theme towards a need for better education, better health, and a better economy, not just donations and giving things. So how do we do this? First, we can reform through education. There is a really, really big difference between rural areas and urban areas, especially in Africa. Julius Agbor from Brookings Research talks about this, and he finds that one of these reasons is because there's fewer teachers in rural areas and less qualified teachers. And this is because in urban areas, there's better infrastructure, there's better pay, and there's a better quality of life. Also, most children in rural areas can't get to school. And in addition to that, most of these children have uneducated parents who don't want their children to go to school. They want them to work for them. Mainly, more often than not, because they or another family member is sick and can't work. So how do we fix this? Well, we should urbanize these rural areas. Don't just build more schools. Africa doesn't need more schools. They need encouragement and awareness for the parents and the children. They need better infrastructure in these poor rural areas, and they need more qualified teachers. As you can see, there are links to uneducation to poor health. So there must be attention to healthcare reform. Roger Strasser from the Family Practice Journal researches this area. He finds that ill health spurs no productivity, which spurs ill health, which spurs poverty, which spurs ill health, and on and on and on it goes until it's a downward spiral. Most of this is the reason because of access. 31% of the poorest in South Africa don't seek health care because they can't afford to. There's also a pro-rich system in place. A series of authors from Health Policy and Planning Journal discuss this. They say, distribution of total health benefits is pro-rich rather than pro-poor, meaning that poorer groups receive a lesser share of benefits from using health services than richer segments, and benefits are not distributed according to need for care. The financing in place for healthcare in most of these areas is through taxes and regressive out-of-pocket payments, they say. So to fix this, fix the transportation and finance issue. Find a way to transport these people who can't get to hospitals because it costs too much. Lower the costs, or make it a donation. And fix the way that it's being financed. Instead, that it's not pro-rich, but it's more pro-poor. There is a theme from taking from the poor and giving to the rich. And this leads me to talk about the economy issue and the huge debt crisis. Dr. Bansal from the Journal of Management speaks about this problem, which is wildly prevalent in India. First off, the poor can't go to banks because they're poor. So, and the banks don't trust the poor to go or to pay them back. So the poor have to go to money lenders, which are, they give out loans, and they're local and they're in villages. And they give out loans and charge between 24 and 120% interest rates annually on these loans that they're giving out. And that's way too much for these poor people to pay back. And so they have to go to another money lender to pay that loan back, and then another money lender, and then another one, till they're just swimming in so much debt. So, Bansal suggests microfinancing. Microfinance institutions charge low interest rates on low loans to a group of people that work together to pay it back. And some of these loans can be used for a variety of things, such as purchasing something to help them in their daily job, or a trip to the hospital for a family member. Microfinancing helps to develop economic growth and development. It's easier to reach to the poor, and the poor builds their own economy instead of relying on others to do it for them. As you can see, poverty is not just a one-way problem. It is an interconnected system of deeply, deeply rooted problems. It might be easier on us to put on a pair of shoes and think that we've done our philanthropic deed of the day and have done our good and are working to solve poverty. However, poverty is not entirely about us at all. Poverty is more about reform, working towards the roots of the problem, not just emergency relief and emergency aid. Be careful who you wish to donate to. Be sure that the people that you're donating to are working towards making serious changes and not just emergency relief or aid, but that they're actually wanting to make long-term changes. Do your research and know who you're donating to and what you're making your efforts to. Thank you.